Welcome back to my Cricut Beginner Series, and this week we're doing your very first heat transfer vinyl project. So last week we did your first adhesive vinyl project. I hope you loved it. This week we're doing heat transfer vinyl, which means we're gonna be ironing on to a fabric blank, in this case, a t-shirt. Before we dive in, a few quick pieces of housekeeping. Number one is the SVG for this project is available for free for you to download so you can work along with me. It's linked in the description of this video, and also linked in the description of this video is the blog post where I talk about all the supplies and materials you need for this whole beginner series, and also just in general as a beginner to get you started. So make sure you pause the video right now and go check those out, download what you need, and then come back to me when you're ready. One more quick thing about heat transfer vinyl that I want to make sure you understand is that when you're using heat transfer vinyl, that means you are transferring via heat onto a fabric blank, in this case, a t-shirt. Now, I tell people this all the time. Can you use an iron for heat transfer vinyl? The answer is yes, but do you want to? Probably not. Transferring with an iron is hard because irons don't heat evenly. So a lot of times part of your design is gonna adhere and part of it won't. So you're gonna end up pressing a lot over and over and over again. And when you do that, you can actually melt the carrier sheet that comes with the heat transfer vinyl, which can be a little bit finicky and tricky. Also, it's gonna require a lot of pressure. So you're gonna find yourself really working those arms to try to get it to adhere to your blank. So what I tell people a lot is that I think the first investment you should make in your Cricut hobby is a good heat press. There's clamshell heat presses that are very professional and they need to stay on a table because they're really heavy and stationary. And those are great if you feel like this is gonna be a long-term hobby for you. But if you wanna get started with something simple, I highly recommend the Cricut Easy Press. I've had two actually, and I think that they are fantastic. They can be stored in a drawer or in a cabinet, so they don't have to be out all the time. And you can get started with a small one for less than $100. It's one of the best investments you're gonna make if you wanna do a lot of heat press type crafts because it heats evenly, it uses even pressure, and you can dictate exactly the temperature that you want it to heat up to, which is super useful for all the different kinds of heat transfer vinyl I know that you're eventually gonna wanna use when you're crafting. Okay, so without further ado, let's hop over to Cricut Design Space and get this design ready to go. So here's the design we're gonna be using, this bloom.svg file, and remember you can download this for free via the link in the description of this video. So we're gonna take it, and we're gonna open up Cricut Design Space over here. I've already clicked upload, but if you need to know how to get there, we can open up a new project, and then you just click upload here in the bottom left. And then you're going to click upload image, and you're gonna drag and drop that SVG right over here. I'm gonna go ahead and make my screen a little bigger so you can really see what I'm doing. It's already named for you, and it's also already set up as a cut image, and that's because this is a .svg file. So note that if you're uploading like a PNG or a JPEG, you're gonna have another option right here to upload it as a print then cut file. You would only ever wanna upload something as a print then cut file if you were gonna be printing it out on your printer and then using your Cricut to cut out the outline of that design, such as if you were making like a printed sticker. Since we're cutting this out on heat transfer vinyl, we're gonna go ahead and just have it as a cut image, and we're gonna click upload. Once it's uploaded, we can add it to our canvas, and then we're really ready to move on to the next part of this project, which is gonna be getting our materials out and measuring our design to see how big we want this to be. So the first thing you need to do is get out your materials for this project, and in this case, it's just a white piece of heat transfer vinyl. I'm using Caesar EasyWeed, which you can, again, in the description of this video, click on the blog post that's linked there and see all of the materials I'm using for this project linked there. But all you need is one piece of Caesar EasyWeed. This is just the glossy white, and this is a 12 by 12 sheet. So go ahead and grab yours, and then you're ready to go. In terms of your blank today, I'm using this plain gray t-shirt from Bella Plus Canvas. You can use whatever shirt you want, but I will go ahead and tell you that my three favorites are Gildan, Bella Plus Canvas, and Comfort Colors, and that is in cheapest to most expensive order. So I'm using a good mid-range shirt today, and that's this gray. I think it's actually called Asphalt in the Bella Plus Canvas color world, but that's what I'm using today. Use whatever color you want, but know that I've got my favorites linked in the description of this video under the blog post. Okay, now we're here in Cricut Design Space now that we've talked about our materials, and we're ready to change the size of this design so it's gonna fit on the front of our shirt. Now I'll go ahead and tell you that a typical front design that covers the entire front of a shirt is between 7 and 8 inches. We're gonna go ahead and make ours 8 by selecting our whole design, clicking the edit menu down here, clicking width, and selecting 8. If you want, you can use a flexible measuring tape to measure the front of your own shirt and make sure that's actually the size that you want. I'm gonna go ahead and go with 8 because I know that's what I want, but feel free to do something different if you want to. And also note that when we changed it to 8, the height adjusted proportionally as well. But if you wanted to warp this design so it didn't adjust proportionally, you can just click the unlock button right here and you could stretch it or make it wider depending on your taste. I'm gonna click undo though because I liked it just how it was. And we're gonna move it kind of back to the center here. Now, I do wanna show you one thing before we move on, and that's if I click make it, and I'm gonna select on matte because we're not using smart materials today, you can see that everything is all jumbled on my mat. And the one thing I do not wanna do is cut this out, weed it, and then have to reassemble it on the front of my shirt. There's a way to actually do this where everything stays in its same relative space. There's actually 2 ways to do it, and we're gonna go over those really quickly just to save you a bunch of time. So if I click the layers tab, I can see all the different layers here. Each letter is its own layer, and then each flower is its own layer. If I select all of these and I click attach under the actions menu, it's gonna keep everything in its same relative space, but it does keep everything as its own layer still. So if I click make it and I click on matte, we can see that everything is kept in the same relative space now, so I wouldn't have to reassemble it. But one thing I want you to notice is that there's these tiny little cuts still happening between each letter of Bloom. And since this is a cursive word, I would much prefer that to just be one solid piece, one cohesive piece when I cut it out. And if you want something to be one cohesive piece, you would use weld instead of attach. So we're gonna click detach and undo what we just did, and we're gonna click weld, and I want you to see the difference. Because weld does exactly what attach does, except it adds the layer of combining the different elements into one cohesive cut, rather than maintaining cuts between each item. So if you have 2 elements that are non-overlapping, like our flowers up here, attach and weld essentially do the same thing. But for Bloom down here at the bottom, it's gonna do something very different because it's going to take away those cuts that were between the letters. So now you can see they're all attached to each other. They're welded together, so to speak. So we're gonna use weld for this design for that very reason. But now we are actually ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and click. Well, actually, we're gonna zoom out is what we're gonna do. There we go. Okay, so we're about ready to move on. We need to do one more thing, and that's mirror. So a general rule of thumb for heat transfer vinyl is that you always mirror it. I will go ahead and tell you that there's a couple of special types of heat transfer vinyl that you don't mirror, but 95% of the time, you're gonna be mirroring your heat transfer vinyl. And we'll talk about why we do that in just a few minutes. But for now, just know that you click mirror. So go ahead and click mirror and then select next. Go ahead and turn on your Cricut if you haven't already, and it should show up here as an accessory for you to select. There's mine. And then once it's selected, you can click next. Once you've mirrored your design, you can go ahead and click next, and it's gonna ask you to select an accessory. Your Cricut should pop up from this list pretty quickly, and once it does, you can select it. And then it's gonna take you to the next screen where we are ready to cut our design. Go ahead and select Everyday Iron-On as your material because that's exactly what we're using. And you can see Cricut prompts you right here to make sure that you have mirror turned on and that you're gonna put your iron-on shiny side down or carrier sheet down. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we're gonna go ahead and put our material onto our mat. And I just wanna point out that you can tell that this has a shinier side and then it has more of a matte side. And sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, but I will usually just bend my vinyl and kind of look at it, and you can tell that one side is shinier than the other. And the shiny side is what's gonna go down on our mat. So if I have my mat right here, upside down. If I have my mat right here, I'm gonna take the shiny side and that's what's gonna go down on my mat. So I'm just gonna line it up in the top left corner here. And I'm going to press it down, and you can even use like a roller or a brayer and make sure you get it really flat and really on there, or you can just use your hand, doesn't really matter. As long as it's well adhered, you should be good to go. So once you have your material well adhered to your mat, you are ready to load it into your machine. The one thing I want to note first, just so you know how it all works, is why we mirrored our design earlier. And the reason why is because we placed it shiny side down, and the shiny side is actually the carrier sheet. Because when we worked with adhesive vinyl, we used a piece of transfer tape to transfer our design onto our blank. But with heat transfer vinyl, it actually has its own carrier sheet that's attached to the vinyl. So because it's attached to the vinyl and it's on the shiny side, we want our Cricut to cut the actual vinyl, not just the carrier sheet. So we place it carrier sheet down and mirror our design so that it's cutting onto the actual vinyl, so that when we weed it at the end, it'll be facing the right way when we flip it over. You'll see, we're about to do that part. Okay, so at this point, your Cricut should be flashing the load unload button telling you it's time to load your mat. So go ahead and line your mat up under these two guiding brackets, just right underneath, and click the load button, and your Cricut will start to feed the mat through. Now, here for just a second, it's gonna calibrate the machine and make sure everything's lined up properly so that it's ready to cut. And once it completes that, it'll be time to go ahead and press the flashing go button. Once the flashing go button is flashing, you can press it, and now your Cricut is gonna go ahead and cut out your design. So now that we've gotten our design off the mat, what you're gonna need for this next step is a weeding hook and a pair of scissors. And what we're gonna go ahead and do first is we're gonna cut around our design so we can save some of this extra vinyl that we didn't use. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut around in a rectangle as closely as I can to my design so I can save the rest of this piece of vinyl. So I'm gonna set that off to the side, and then I'm ready to actually weed what's left. So I'm gonna take my weeding hook, and what I like to do is I slip under the edge of the design, whatever's closest to the edge of where you just cut. So you can see that I've got my design weeded here, and I'm just gone right up to the edge of my sheet. So when I'm at the edge, I can pull back, and then I actually just slip my weeding hook out, and I can pull with my hands to kind of get this big outer chunk of vinyl that we know we're not gonna use, this excess. I can just pull that away with my hands. And as long as you're pulling slowly and kind of at a tight angle to your carrier sheet, you shouldn't have any problems with the vinyl pulling up. And just kind of take your time with it, pull away. It's okay if it rips. And get this big outer area pulled away. Okay, so you can push your scrap off to the side, and then you can see we've actually already got most of the design weeded just in that one fell swoop there at the beginning. And now I can go in with my weeding hook and get some of these smaller areas that I missed on that first go around. And I'm just gonna set my scraps off to the side for now. We'll throw those away when we're done. Okay, now that we're done weeding, you can see that your design is ready to go, and you can also see why we did that mirroring earlier on, because now that we've weeded away our vinyl from our carrier sheet, which is on the underside, when I flip it up the correct direction, it's facing the right way. So you can see that when I place this down on my shirt and heat press it, I'll be able to peel away this sticky carrier sheet and be left with just the design. So let's get ready to do just that by setting up our heat press. We're gonna go ahead and turn on our heat press. We're gonna set the temperature to 305, and we're gonna set the timer to 15 seconds. And then we're gonna let it preheat. So to heat press your garment successfully, you're gonna want some sort of heating pad to go underneath it. I sometimes use just a towel, but you can also use the Easy Press mat if you want to. And once your heat press is ready to go, you're gonna lay your shirt down on top of whatever you are pressing on. Like I said, a towel works just fine for this. Make sure it's even and straight. And then once you've got it all lined up, you're actually gonna preheat your shirt for 15 seconds. So you can just set your heat press on top, press the Cricut button, and let it run one full cycle. Once you've preheated your shirt, you can go ahead and lay your design centered right where you want it. Lay it down flat, and then you can go ahead and put your heat press on top of it, press the green Cricut button and give it a firm press for the full 15-second cycle. When the easy press beeps, it's ready to be done, so you can lift it off, put it back in its housing, and slowly peel back your carrier sheet, leaving your design right on your shirt. To make sure your design is really adhered to your shirt, I like to then flip my design over and run the easy press on one more cycle from the back of the shirt, just making sure it really gets adhered to the front. Okay, then when you're done with that step, you are done. So you just completed your very first heat transfer vinyl project. I hope you had so much fun. I hope you really enjoy wearing this shirt, and I hope you feel confident to do your next heat transfer vinyl project. So until next time, happy crafting.